To be honest, like for me, the people that I saw, the first images that really struck a chord with me were, trans women and pornography. And there was something that unlocked in my brain that I saw these wonderful, fearless performers becoming desirable.
In this clip, one of the Wachowski brothers admits that watching porn made him trans. How can he say this with a straight face and not feel embarrassed? The Wachowski brothers are movie directors who identify as trans women. They're most known for directing the Matrix movie series. They both have two separate but related fetishes. They are lesbian fetishists and autogynephiles. Just to be clear, when I say lesbian fetishist, I mean that the brothers are straight men who fetishize lesbians. I do not mean that being a lesbian is a fetish. For those of you who don't know, autogynephilia is when a man gets turned on at the sight of himself dressed up as a woman. It's a well-documented narcissistic trait where the man wishes to have sex with himself as a woman. Some examples of autogynephilia, which are less extreme and more commonplace compared to transgenderism, are when men will play as attractive women in video games, or when male VTubers use cat-girl VTubing models with exaggerated female proportions. At the end of the day, though, all forms of autogynephilia involve men being pervs. The Google and Oxford Dictionary definition for fetish is a form of sexual desire in which gratification is strongly linked to a particular object or activity or part of the body rather than the sexual organs. Therefore, going by this definition, transgenderism many times is a fetish, while same-sex attraction is not a fetish, since same-sex attraction is when someone is attracted to people of the same biological sex. A side note, Democrats falsely claim that the LGB in LGBT is attraction to gender identity rather than biological sex. But, going by the definition on screen, this would imply that same-sex attraction is a fetish. Democrats are therefore homophobic. To help explain what autogynephilia is, allow me to tell you about Andrea Long-Chu, who is the most famous autogynephile in academia. He won a Pulitzer Prize for his book, which is about becoming a trans woman. Here's a clip.
Male academic who identifies as a transgender woman, so it's a biological guy who's walking around as a woman, trying to be, has been awarded a Pulitzer Prize for literary criticism. And they say it's prompted an outcry on social media as users draw attention to his history of disturbing comments about how pornography influenced his transition. So this person, if you look at this person's history, they've got a lengthy history, reports Redux, of equating womanhood with pornography addiction. Quoting again, in 2019, Chu's first book, Females, was published by Verso Press. The thesis was that anyone can become female. Not true. And that being penetrated during sex defines womanhood. Okay. Getting effed makes you female because effed is what a female is. Chu, the now Pulitzer Prize winner, writes in the short book, describing himself as once being a sad, pretentious boy, furious about rape, hopelessly addicted to pornography. Chu claims that it was his obsession with pornography that led him to begin identifying as transgender. In 2018, Chu published an essay titled On Liking Women. This, to me, is the most offensive thing I've read of all. Here it is, ladies. The truth is, he writes, I've never been able to differentiate liking women from wanting to be like them. I transitioned. This is his view of us. For gossip, compliments, lipstick, mascara, crying at the movies, being someone's girlfriend, for sex toys, for feeling hot, for getting hit on by butches, for Daisy Dukes, bikini tops, and all the dresses, and my God, for the breasts. How on earth is this person winning any awards from any respectable institution on earth?
It's so crazy that in American mainstream media, only conservative women call men like this out, while liberal feminists stay silent. In addition to being autogynephiles, the Wachowski brothers are also lesbian fetishists. Their lesbian fetishism can best be proven and analyzed by looking at their film, Bound. The movie was made in 1996, and Wikipedia describes it as an erotic crime thriller film. The movie lacks romance and clearly appeals to the male gaze in the worst ways possible. It's basically porn masquerading as film. Before I get into the analysis of the movie, a quick introduction. My name is Mariana, and on my channel, I dissect film, television, and video games from a radical feminist perspective. So if this interests you, please consider subscribing. A quick disclaimer: this video does not advocate for harassment, violence, or participation in hate groups of any kind. Also, I'm going to spoil this movie for you, but you won't care because it's a bad movie anyways. When I first watched Bound, I didn't know that the Wachowski brothers made it. I watched this movie directly after watching The L Word, which is a romantic lesbian TV show that was made by lesbians and focuses on emotional connection. Bound is completely different in energy. I remember thinking that it was clearly made by men and for the male gaze. So much so that I googled who the directors were, and thus found out what my next YouTube video topic would be. The first half of the movie is just graphic innuendos to sex, and very, very overt flirting. I won't show most of the flirting because it's so graphic that YouTube probably wouldn't allow it, and also I don't want to spread lesbian fetishist scenes like this. Plus, I would lose my status as a puritanical channel, and we can't have that. For the entire movie, there is barely any sharing of personal information between the two lesbians, and on a personal level, they don't get to know anything about each other. The connection is purely physical, with no reason for emotional connection. This is a very male portrayal of relationships. Contrast this with shows like The L Word, where the lesbians know each other on a personal level. The L Word has some explicit scenes, but most of the scenes deal with emotional connection and friendship. In Bound, the lack of emotional connection between the lesbians is so severe that it hinders the logic of the story. Many times in the movie, the two lesbians are forced to trust each other with their lives. The movie is about the mafia and illegal money, so the stakes are very high. Since these two are practically strangers, it makes absolutely no sense that they trust each other to this degree.
When I get the scotch, how do I know you won't just take off?
The same way I'll know that you went to go get the scotch. Trust.
And one of the lesbians, Corky, just got out of jail. She was in jail because her previous lover betrayed her. This makes her even less likely to trust a new partner.
And if he runs, everyone will assume he took the money.
You'll be clean, and we'll be rich.
Jesus, that's beautiful. If you're this goddamn smart, how did you ever get caught?
I had a partner once. She fucked me.
I won't.
What makes this partner different from the last? Why does she trust this partner more? These are questions that the Wachowski brothers fail to answer in their film. Why are these two women in love with each other? They only met recently, and they've only talked about sex and mafia money. They don't know each other at all. Men tend to fall in lust irrationally and quickly, while women are more reasonable and take a long time to truly fall in love. This plot is very male in nature.
Corky. I want to tell you something.
I know, Violet. I know.
You know what? This person is a literal stranger and you don't know anything. They also made one of the lesbians so forward in her pursuit of the other lesbian that she comes off as completely crazy. The two spend a lot of time in rooms that are next to each other for work and housing reasons, and they first meet in the elevator of the building. A few seconds after meeting, Violet, the crazy lesbian, purposefully has sex with her husband against the wall of her apartment so that Corky hears. Then Violet knocks on the door and offers coffee. More overt flirting ensues.
The walls here are so terribly thin.
Really?
It's like you're in the same room.
Violet then makes her husband hire Corky, who works as a plumber. Violet flirts some more again. Then, in the middle of the night, when Corky gets in her car in a dark alley, Violet appears out of nowhere. And this entire time, by the way, the flirting is one-sided. Something about this gives male fantasy vibes, because most women would feel uncomfortable if pursued this aggressively. Women are more physically vulnerable than men, so this behavior when pursuing women is completely inappropriate, whether the pursuer is male or female. The rest of the movie is just boring and poorly written mafia stuff, and it's not worth talking about in depth. The mafia stuff is too detailed. It makes for a good background premise, but the movie should have focused more on Violet and Corky's relationship. The movie has so much irrelevant detail regarding the mafia stuff that there's no room for actual romance. And in many places, there seems to be too much of a sharp divide between relationship stuff and mafia stuff. These two aspects aren't integrated enough. By now, I've made a strong case that this film is a lesbian fetishist movie, rather than a lesbian romance movie. So let me get into the topic of lesbian fetishism, why it's anti-feminist, and why men shouldn't be allowed into female-only spaces. In her book, The Transsexual Empire, radical feminist Janice Raymond gives a real-life example of lesbian fetishism. There was once a short story written by a lesbian fetishist. The short story appeared in Penthouse, a porn magazine for men. It was written by a man who wanted to transition for perverted reasons. Here's the quote from Janice Raymond's book. The story, written by the male fetishist, begins by setting the scene in and around Grace and Ruby's restaurant and is written from the point of view of the voyeuristic narrator. Quote, "It is a women's restaurant. Men are not permitted. What goes on there precisely, no man knows. I'm a man. I'm burning to find out." End quote. The narrator then proceeds to caricature Grace and Ruby as butch and femme, as well as to relate his several attempts to gain entrance. After 2 unsuccessful endeavors, he goes to a department store, buys a pink polyester pantsuit, a bra, pantyhose, and cosmetics with which he makes himself up to pass as a woman. He gains entrance and is able to experience what he has been missing. Quote, "Here I was, embosomed by the very knave, the very omphalos of furtive femininity, a prize patron of the women's restaurant, a member, privy to its innermost secrets. There they were, women, chewing, drinking, digesting, chatting, giggling, crossing and uncrossing their legs, shoes off, feet up, smoking cigarettes, flashing silverware, tapping time to the music. Women among women. I bathed in their soft chatter, bird song, the laughter like falling coils of hair. I lit a cigarette and grinned. No more fairy book hero thoughts of rescuing Ruby. Oh no, this was paradise." End quote. Having drunk 6 tequila sunrises and a carafe of dinner wine, the male intruder/narrator finds it necessary to relieve himself, but forgets to sit down when he urinates in the restroom, at which point he is discovered by Grace. The story ends with his savoring of the triumph of temporary infiltration and a plan for permanent invasion. The story becomes more explicit after this, so I'll stop there. But eventually the man seeks to get surgery so that he won't be found out next time. Again, this appeared in a porn magazine. When straight men transition into women, it's because they have autogynephilia and a lesbian fetish. The example provided in this quote is different from gay men who transition into women because of internalized homophobia, or women who transition into men to escape misogyny. These straight men who claim to be lesbians pressure real lesbians into having sex with them. They claim that lesbianism is attraction to gender identity rather than biological sex. They say that genital preferences are transphobic. On her YouTube channel, Magdalene Burns, a real lesbian, talks about the difference between preference and sexual orientation.
Would you date a trans person, honestly?
No, I would not date a trans person. I wouldn't date a male trans woman because they're male, and I wouldn't date a female trans man because they want to be a man. So the first example relates to sexual orientation, and the second relates to sexual preference. And both of those are valid reasons to reject someone.
Well, if you said no, I'm sorry, but that's pretty discriminatory.
Well, I'm not sorry, because I understand that dating is a discriminatory process. People are allowed to sexually reject anyone for any reason they want without being coercively guilt-tripped for it. It's kind of a basic concept of feminism.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you're a horrible person who hates trans people.
You kind of are, because when you say that sexual rejection is a form of discrimination, you're suggesting that one group can oppress another group by sexually rejecting them.
This is a good distinction to remember. Furthermore, trans logic is flawed because what if you identify as a lesbian and your female partner all of a sudden transitions into male? Are you now straight? Believing in an ideology that allows your partner to decide your sexual orientation is a crazy amount of power to give to someone else, and doesn't make any sense. For example, in this video, Ariel, the woman speaking, is a lesbian who dated a woman who later transitioned into a man.
I have an interesting story to tell, and a lot of people don't know this about me, but I dated You would say a trans person is who they say they are, no matter what their transition stage is, correct?
Absolutely.
So then I have dated a trans man in the past. Interestingly
While you
enough.
identified as a
Absolutely.
lesbian?
Yes.
So then did you see him as a woman?
Yes. Not after the fact. They presented as a female to me. They were female. They were fully intact as a female. They called themselves lesbians. They transitioned later on. Technically, I did date a trans guy. Does that mean I'm bisexual?
No, I don't think
Absolutely
so.
not.
They didn't
Absolutely not. I'm sorry.
identify.
Again, this makes no sense. In the transsexual empire, Janice Raymond makes a great observation that historically eunuchs, aka castrated men, were utilized by men in power. Emperors and kings would use eunuchs to watch over their harems of women. By putting these quote-unquote harmless men into women's spaces, emperors were able to keep an eye on women and maintain control over them. Politically, trans women in women's spaces allow biological men to maintain control over women. It allows them to access women's private political discussions and positions within women's political organizations. She writes, "It thus appears that eunuchs, to some extent, always attached themselves to women's spaces and, most frequently, were used to supervise women's freedom of movement and to harness women's self-centeredness and self-government. Like eunuchs, transsexuals have gained prominent and dominant access to feminist political circles, barred to other men. Just because transsexually constructed lesbian feminists are not only castrated men, but have also acquired artifacts of a woman's body and spirit, does not mean that they are unmen, and that they cannot be used as keepers of woman-identified women when the real men, the rulers of patriarchy, decide that the women's movement should be controlled and contained. The political implications of historical eunuchism and its potential for female control should not be lost upon woman-identified women." I would highly recommend looking through Janice Raymond's book, as it's free to download on her website. It's a shame that more radical feminist books like this aren't available in mainstream bookstores like Barnes & Noble's. I tried to buy this book in print because that's how I prefer to read, but the cheapest copy was over $100 from a used book website. The Wachowski brothers, interviews they've done, and their movie Bound prove that lesbian fetishism is widespread within the male-to-female transgender community. Apparently, one of the Wachowski brothers is going to make a film adaptation of Manhunt, a book that promotes violence towards terfs and J.K. Rowling. What he doesn't know is that our movement is growing. In the UK, radical feminism is now mainstream, and I am proof that our movement is spreading worldwide and in the States. So let him make his little movie, and us real feminists will expose the women-hating rhetoric in it, while having a good laugh. Bring it on. I'm new to making YouTube videos, but I plan to make more soon and consistently. If you enjoyed this video, please consider following me on X. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.